name's Anne Odeke and I'm an Essex-based actor and now I can say writer, thanks to the Queen's Theatre, since I have been involved in writing for Misfits.
So Elsa James, I'm a Southend-based visual artist. I've been making work since 2010 because I graduated quite late. But it's a long story. I've always wanted to be an artist since I left school in 1984. And I make work that kind of responds to political and social issues through video, using text, performance, to camera. I like calling out history, but also I feel a sense of kind of duty in terms of kind of readdressing the persistent absence in the historical record, and kind of shifting our kind of collective narrative that Britain holds about, you know, there being Black presence in Britain. So that's kind of a theme in my work.
So I found out about Princess Dinubolu, funny enough, in a discussion with Doug at the Queen's Theatre, Doug who runs it, and I was talking to him, or we were chatting about, in terms of this Misfits and the project Misfits, you know, the idea was that it was a celebration of Essex, that you could, that I had the freedom to write about whoever I liked. It could be a historical figure, it could be a family member, whoever I wanted to. So we were just throwing some ideas around. Doug, in the process, then mentioned in our conversation, well, he asked me, he goes, oh, wasn't there like a princess in Essex? And I was like, no, Doug, that's ridiculous. There's never been Princess Essex ever. And then he was like, okay. And I was like, but I will look it up, you know, like kind of said it to make him feel better. So I went away and had a look, and actually, and he was kind of right in the sense that that's when I then found this story of Princess Dinubolu, which had been found by Elsa, which is the most incredible story and the most incredible true story about this woman called Princess Dinubolu. And I just thought that is something that should not be hidden. That's something everyone needs to hear.
So I first came across the story of Princess Dinubolu. Actually, I was doing the school run and I was listening to the Radio 4, and there was a historian standing outside, who was literally at Nelson's side when he died. And so, you know, when Nelson died in 1805, this is the Battle of Trafalgar, there was a black mariner, and I'm like, wow, you know, this is like hiding in plain view. This is in centre of London. And I think around that same time, David Olusoga was also, so it's around 2016, he had a programme on BBC called Black and British Forgotten History. And he was talking about, you know, Black Romans, Black Tudors, and so on. And I was thinking, wow, okay, this is all this, these stories, should I say, of there being Black presence in Britain, but this is pre-Windrush. And I was thinking, well, you know, David's done a TV program, he's got a book. This is a radio program that I'm listening to, and I was thinking, I want to find a story and respond as an artist conceptually. And so I actually I kind of set about applying for my first solo funded project as an artist, and contacted that Steve Martin, his name is the historian that I heard on the radio, and just said, look, I just want to work with, you know, I just want you to kind of find any story of Black presence pre-Windrush. I just want to respond. I want to do something poetic. I want it to do something. And I just literally wasn't expecting to find anything in Essex at all. But he was aware actually of there being the story of Princess Dinubolu in Southend. And so her story starts in Great Yarmouth. So she's sending a telegram to a Mr. Bacon, who is the manager of the Kursaal in Southend, as we know it, which is still there. And she's saying that there's a colour bar in Yarmouth. I don't think they called it Great Yarmouth then. I don't know when the Great came in. But anyway, in Yarmouth. But you have a competition at the Kersal in Southend. Do you have a colour bar? And so he replies back saying, "Oh, kind of thing. I'm not sure because couple of years previous to 1908, the Kersal had a baby competition where you'd put your baby on the stage, and in order to the baby that would win, the audience would cheer and clap the loudest for whoever won. It's not like what do we have? The Voice, you know, people don't phone in. It was just the audience clapping. That's how they did it. And so he's saying that this black baby won, but the words that he used to describe this black baby is he uses the N word, and he calls the baby ugly. And he got a lot of stick from the people of Southend, because, you know, they thought it was his fault that this black baby won. And so he didn't want to take any chances by responding back to the telegram and saying, yes, you can enter. He's going to put this to the mayor of Southend. It's like, bloody hell, wow. And so obviously, you know, she got permission to enter the competition. And then after that, all we know is that we have this whole, then there's the whole of the UK, the media, just like, wow, there's a black woman entering a competition. And it just goes a bit mad. And literally from Aberdeen to, like, literally the whole of the UK are just up in arms about, you know, this black woman entering our, you know, competition. They called her the Chocolate Princess. And it's all fragmented in terms of, like, some papers say she spoke 3 languages, she's a princess, she had an interpreter. You don't really get a full sense of exactly what the story was. You just know that she was in Great Yarmouth. She wanted to enter this competition. She did enter the competition and she didn't win. But all of the in between is like the newspapers just saying what's going on. Fascinating, just fascinating for me.
So I found Princess Dinubolu inspiring because, I mean, I myself am from the Southend area. So I grew up around here. My friends and family are from here. I, you know, still live in this area, and I don't recall hearing any black role models at all when I was growing up. And I just feel like if I'd have heard this story when I was younger, kind of what effect that would have had on me as a younger woman. And I just think it's because it is a story of strength. It is a story which kind of really does I was going to say stick 2 fingers up to society, but I don't know if I can say that, but that's what I'm saying. So yeah, I feel like it's that, and it's done in such a classy way, it's done in such a clever way, that how can anyone not be drawn to it, you know? And anyone from Essex, any woman, any black person, do you know what I mean? Like, it's incredible. So for me, that's why I was drawn to it. Why is it that we find that black history, black Essex history seems to be forgotten? And actually, the more I've worked on this play, the less I actually like the term forgotten with regards to black history. I feel like that, because I just feel that there is a difference between the word forgotten and the word hidden. And actually, we have to ask ourselves, you know, why is it that so much of black history, black Essex history, why is it that it's not there? Why are we not encouraged to look for it, to celebrate it? And I guess it does, you know, there is that thing of, it has to come down to a certain degree of oppression. I mean, it's a form of control, isn't it? Which it just is. But I suppose, and the other thing is, you know, in schools, because then you have to ask yourself, where does this importance come from? You know, who is it that tells us what is important in history? Who is it that tells us what we should be celebrating and what it's okay to hide in the archives? Do you know what I mean? So I guess it does, of course it is it has to be systematic. It has to come from the fact that, you know, if we're talking education, we all go through the system. So, you know, what we're taught at school isn't Black history, certainly Asian history, nothing of it. Do you know what I mean? So we're taught in schools that only certain things are important, you know, only certain leaders are important. So, you know, and normally it tends to be male, and, you know, white male, then maybe a woman did something, white woman, and then somewhere along the lines, you know, it's like, and then so Black history, of which we only really ever hear are, of course, Martin Luther King and the civil rights. Amazing, that really is one of the only things that we hear, and also the slave trade. So really, when we learn about Black history, the only thing we tend to learn in schools, and that we are teaching generation after generation, is that it is oppression. You know, it's not a celebration of this is what Black culture is. It's all this, you know. And yet again, it's like just this. It's just another way of keeping people down, keeping them where they should be. And I'm being honest. You know, I do feel uncomfortable saying that. You know, I do, but I just feel like in writing this play, in writing about Princess Dinubolu, they're honest thoughts that I've had as a writer.
But first of all, I mean, for me, why she's inspiring, I you know, I studied her, you know, the story for so long, and she, there's a hashtag Black Girl Magic for inspiring Black women globally, and for me, she feels like she's the first Black Girl Magic in Britain, because she actually, you know, like she didn't give a damn about, she just had her attitude. She was taking on then what would have been a white male media establishment, and she took the piss, you know, in some papers. She said things like, I would, you know, what do you do? They would ask these lovely dumb questions. What's your beauty secret? And she said, oh, I bury myself to the head in sand, and that makes the Black skin so velvety. And they were like, oh, do you really? You know, it's just like, so she had some weird, I just think she just took on this white media male establishment with just like class. So she has to win the first Black Girl Magic. But I think going back to like sort of Black history, why it's so hard to unearth as well, it's because I think because there's some really dark, ugly parts, and Britain wants to keep this narrative of being this kind of squeaky clean nation, empire, you know, and all of the, you know, slavery, all of that happened in the Caribbean, and so it's away. And actually, you know, Britain was really heavily involved in the transatlantic slave trade. It's just that, you know, some of it happened on these shores in Britain, and not a lot did, so we don't know about it. And it's just a dark past that I'm sure, you know, it's just to just keep hidden, as you said, Anne, hidden, you know, forgotten, hidden, but hidden, hiding by not incorporating. And also, I have an issue with saying Black history to a certain degree, because it's part of British history. So British history has stories of people from African heritage, but I'm happy to go along with saying Black history and having Black History Month until this hidden part of British history is part of the mainstream history. It's just part of the story, you know, of everyday heroes of the truth. Then, you know, I think it's valid to have a Black History Month and refer to this part of British history as Black history, for those reasons.
Yeah, the idea of the Black woman and the Essex woman certainly do overlap. You know, the idea of the Essex girl, the derogatory term, the outdated term of the Essex girl, isn't celebrated. You know, and I've mentioned earlier that actually, you know, neither is historically the Black woman. You know, they're not celebrated as well. And a lot of people in general tend to be quite, this term Essex girl, you know, we associate it with the stilettos, you know, the high heels, the makeup, bleach blonde hair, do you know what I mean? The idea of the bimboness, like we get that, but all those, like the idea of that term is again to suppress You know, it's a term to keep women in their place. You know, the idea of the black woman, you know, is again, you know, someone who, if we're talking again, stereotyping, feisty, mouthy, sassy, hate that word. Do you know what I mean? It's all these connotations. And again, you know, like, this is what they're like, you know, that's what they're like as women. So, and again, it's this thing of, you know, not really trustworthy. They're not the kind of women that, you know, you want to take her, that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? So there's certainly this overlap. So you then have kind of, you know, particularly when I'm growing up, it's like, actually, I don't really want to associate myself with the Essex girl. Do you know what I mean? Like, you try and escape Essex to a certain degree. And I remember when I was younger being like, you know what, I'm gonna leave. I'm leaving this place. Like as soon as I can, I am going. Do you know what I mean? I actually specifically remember saying I'm moving to Battersea. Now I wonder why I said that, but it was probably one of the only places that I've probably known in London. But do you know what I mean? So there certainly are overlaps in terms of how people perceive the Essex girl, and also in terms of black women. But again, they're all kind of, you know, we have to ask ourselves who is saying it and why are they saying it. And I feel very grateful for the fact that things like Misfits are, you know, is celebrating Essex, is trying to help Essex to rid itself of these terrible terms, of these negative connotations that seem to follow us when we go abroad and people ask us where we come from. And then no matter where we are in the world, you mention Essex and they go, oh, so you're an Essex girl. And, you know, they kind of give you that look.
There are definitely some overlaps with the, you know, the stereotype of the Essex girl and the black women globally, because I think, for number one, they're both othered. You know, the Essex girl is different to any other girl or woman, should I say, from the rest of the UK. You know, we have a dictionary definition, God damn it, you know, and also both are sexually objectified. So in that definition, you know, the Essex girl is sexually promiscuous, and you also have these kind of old narratives of the black woman being the kind of the Jezebel, the hussy, the kind of, you know, the sexually you know, promiscuous as well. But actually, for me, so for me, what I did with this was I tried to, because I was ashamed, definitely, only until 2 years ago, of just saying to anybody that I lived in Essex, because of this stereotype, because of the stereotype of the county as a whole, you know, Kent is the Garden of England and Essex is the armpit of Britain, and so for me, part of kind of accepting this term, and actually it was because of these stories. It was because of doing Forgotten Black Essex, but also being part of a collective called the Essex Girl Liberation Front, where we're just actually trying to change the dictionary definition and perception. And part of that was like wearing a T-shirt that said, "This is what an Essex girl looks like," and then thinking about making something positive about you know, being an Essex girl, but actually being a black Essex girl, because let's face it, the stereotype of the Essex girl is a white woman with blonde hair and orange skin and all of the, you know, the derogative stereotype, but it's always, the narrative is what comes to mind, a white woman, and it's not a black woman. So I coined the term Black Girl Essex in order to liberate and celebrate and just have something positive and just to be proud of being black in Essex. So for me, like, Misfits is for you, and I think like it's time to kind of like shake off all of that, you know, that stigma, and actually celebrate, be happy. And I shout it out. I am, you know, an Essex girl, and that's fine. But I'm also a black Essex girl. And that's what that's my thing. With me, it makes me feel so many emotions because it's about me and my family. So it's traumatic because I've been shouted this, you know, from the margins my whole entire life. Listening to my parents talking about injustices about their lives as that, you know, that first generation of the, you know, that the Windrush generation, and also experiencing in institutional racism, with going to school in the 70s and being part of that first cohort of black children going to school en masse, as it were, in Britain. And so, you know, it's about me. What's been amazing, I think, with the Black Lives Matter since in the wake of George Floyd's death, is that it's not just Black people that are talking about Black Lives Matters. We've got white communities around the world just also seeing and talking about, you know, Black Lives Matters. And so that's really transformational, and that feels emotional, that's great. And I'm just like, that's, you know, that's what the difference is now. And it can only be a positive thing when we have real systemic change and you know, systemic racism is got rid of. That will just be the dream, that I can just be like an ordinary person and not have to think that or maybe that person said that because of the color of my skin. That kind of third question that I always have to think, it could be that, or it might not.
For me, I am, don't get me wrong, I'm so proud in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement. I am over the moon. You can tell that I'm slightly, my shoulders have gone up a little bit, because my slight worry is that it's something which, in terms of the public, I'm fearful that it may be a novelty, right? That's kind of my feeling, is that it's something that perhaps, you know, for some people, and I'm not saying for everyone, of course I can't speak for everybody, but I'm saying that it's something that, you know, may have just kind of, people jumped on board because there's a pandemic, they wanted to think about something else, Black Lives Matter occurred, and therefore that was something, you know. And I'm scared that therefore it's that then kind of when Christmas comes, we'll all have some, you know, something else to think about, so then we'll forget about it. And you know, and there will be other deaths, you know, there's no debate about that, there will be, and that absolutely breaks my heart. But what I am absolutely hoping, praying for, is that this wave, which I feel in terms of Black Lives Matter is probably, in terms of movement in this country, is the strongest that it has ever been, you know. And with any wave, it's going to pick up things on the way. And I think a lot of what the Black Lives Matter movement has done is it has certainly awakened the younger generation, right? And a lot of them have jumped on board. And, you know, Elsa was mentioning in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement in Southend being led by some students from East 15, and she's absolutely right. These younger people are the ones that felt so driven that they went and, you know, they've done interviews, they've gone to artists, they've, you know, they've spoken to people, and they've spoken to the people of Southend, you know, they've done the most incredible job. So I'm really hoping that in terms of wave, that I might not, you know, I'm not expecting to see a change tomorrow. In fact, in a fearful way, I'm perhaps not even thinking that maybe it might not come in my lifetime. But with regards to the next generation, it will be there for them. And that's what I hope for Black Lives Matter. But of course, with anything like this, it has to start somewhere. So I'm really pleased that, of course, it has begun. And yeah, and certainly that there will be a change. But yeah, hopefully sooner rather than later. I guess what theatre can do in terms of being a better ally to the Black community, is theatre has a responsibility to tell stories, you know, that's why it's theatre. If it happens that theatres, you know, if it happens that a theatre, no matter where it is in Britain, isn't reflecting the stories of its community, then there is a problem. Because then you have to ask yourself, well, then what is the point? What is the point of it? Because they go, you know, we might go there certainly to switch off, you know, it's a form of escapism. But if we really believe in theatre, then we want the audience to go see something and then to take something from it. And for me, theatre is about education. Yeah, whether that be in the format of musical, pantomime, or traditional play. Do you know what I mean? It's still there to educate. So theatres have a job to tell the stories of its community. What we tend to find in theatre is that we tend to see essentially white productions of white commas, white productions, might be predominantly a white cast, both out front and backstage, and again, even if we, and let's say even if we do have, inverted commas, a black story, it might be that, again, that's, you know, the actors might be black, but by all means everybody else involved in it is white, you know. So I guess theatre needs to help in terms of, one, telling the story, making sure it tells the story of its community. That's, of course, not just white stories. Again, you know, a story's a story, it doesn't matter, but you understand what I'm saying. White stories, black stories, Asian stories. I mean, everybody's story. If you're just saying the same things, then you're not doing your job. And I said earlier about how I feel like, you know, all these stories, if we reference, you know, if we go back to Princess Dinubolu and the idea of her story and the fact that it is forgotten, in brackets, actually it was hidden, then again, theatres, by not putting on shows that represent their community, right? Again, you are being just as bad. You are hiding stories because you are not doing your job. You are just as bad as the people that are like, you know, actually we're gonna push black stories to the side. We might put on one just to keep people happy and tick a box, but you know, certainly we will just you know, we'll just do the same stuff just to make a bit of money. So in terms of how theatres can help, it's, you have to go to the people, yeah, because if the people aren't willing to come to you, you have to ask yourself, well, why is it that they don't feel comfortable coming in my building? You know, why is it that they're not there as audience members? Why is it that they're not shouting for their stories to be told? Because they kind of feel like there's no point. So by all means, theatres, in terms of what they can do, yes, telling stories, but also not being lazy enough to just get comfortable. You've got to go out there and find them. So that's what I think.
For me, I'm going to be quite blatant. It's the gatekeepers. It's the gatekeepers. So those that are making those decisions, they need to kind of change over, because actually, you know, until now, we've had an issue with you know, other stories being told. And so you know, those people, those gatekeepers, those, you know, directors, and I'm not naming anyone, you know, in general, those gatekeepers need to actually step aside or do their job properly, and make sure that they are doing the right service as public, for public companies, theatres, etc. And so I'm quite, you know, as I say, you know, change. The gatekeepers need to get the, you know, need to be doing their job properly. And you know, and that's also advertising on TV as well. You know, it just goes right across the board. So you know, until there needs to be a shift in the institutions in order to, I think, in order for those stories to be told. And because, you know, it's about the selection process, and then it's about, well, who's telling, you know, ensuring that the writers tell their own stories, and that they're, as Steve McQueen said quite recently, about, you know, when we get to a stage where there are crappy black films, well, because all of the black films that are out there, they, you know, you have to, you know, your standard has to be so, you know, you talk about Black Panther, there are some really excellent films that have, you know, and Get Out, I think it is, yeah, that have made, you know, done really, really well. But actually we just need to like be at the same pace with white television media and so on, you know. So when there's like kind of crappy black theatre, black films, then we don't have to be having this conversation, do we? I think it's just quite simple.